I was 34, a single mother, and the only one in my family with a steady job. My parents treated me like a walking ATM, while my younger sister Kayla, 28, hadn't held a job longer than a few months. She was the golden child. I was the default caretaker. Always available, always disposable. It started small. My parents would say things like, "Kayla's struggling, help her out a little." And I did. At first, I helped with her tuition, paid for her car repairs, sent money just until she gets back on her feet. But Kayla never stood on her own, and my parents never stopped asking. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I lived modestly in a rented duplex with my daughter Ava, who was 8. Everything I did for her. School lunches, clothes, dance classes. She was quiet and thoughtful, always watching. And she was watching the day everything changed. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got the text from Mom. "Rent is due. Help your sister out. We raised you better than this." I ignored it. I had just paid for Ava's dental procedure and couldn't afford to bail Kayla out again. 2 hours later, they showed up at my place. No warning. Mom didn't knock. She banged on the door like a debt collector. Dad stood behind her with that smug look he always wore when he was about to lecture me. "Why aren't you answering our messages?" Mom snapped as I opened the door. "I've already told you. I can't pay Kayla's rent this month." "Oh, so your daughter's dentist bill is more important than your sister's roof," Dad said sarcastically, stepping inside without being invited. "I'm not responsible for her lifestyle," I said, standing my ground. "She had options. She chose not to work. Don't put that on me." That's when things escalated. Mom threw her purse across the room, screaming, "Ungrateful brat! You think you're better than us now?" Before I could even process it, she slapped me hard. Dad grabbed my arm and shoved me toward the wall. I stumbled, hitting the corner of the bookshelf. Blood pooled at my hairline. Ava screamed. "Mom!" she cried, running toward me. But Mom stopped her. "Stay out of this, little girl. Maybe if your mother listened like Kayla does, she wouldn't get punished." Punished. Like I was some child again, not a grown woman with her own child being assaulted in her own home. I stood up, shaking. Ava was crying, her tiny hands trembling. She saw everything I had tried to shield her from for years. "You need to leave," I said through my teeth. "We'll leave when you transfer the money," Dad barked. "Until then, we'll stay and make sure you don't waste any more of it." They sat on my couch like they owned the place. My blood dripping onto the floor didn't matter. My daughter crying in the corner didn't matter. All they cared about was Kayla's rent. That night, I locked myself and Ava in my room. She lay beside me, holding my hand. "Mom," she whispered, "why do Grandma and Grandpa hate you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have the words. But in that moment, something in me cracked, then shifted. The next morning, I drove Ava to school with sunglasses covering my swollen eye. Then, I drove straight to the courthouse. My name wasn't on the lease, but I knew who owned the building. And I knew something they didn't. 2 years ago, I had been putting away everything I could. Every raise, every bonus, every freelance gig. I wasn't just saving. I was investing. And one of those investments was quietly buying the very house my parents lived in, the one I grew up in. A foreclosure. Cheap. I bought it through an LLC. They never knew. But now I had a new idea. If they wanted to remind me what family meant, I was about to redefine it in my terms. I didn't tell anyone what I was about to do, not even my closest friend or my lawyer. I wanted silence, precision, and power. For once in my life, I didn't want to explain myself to anyone. I wanted to act. That Friday, while Ava was at school, I filed an emergency restraining order. The bruises on my arms and the fresh medical report were enough to push it through. I told the officer. They beat me, in front of my daughter, because I wouldn't pay for my sister's rent. He didn't even blink. "You did the right thing," he said. "Let us handle the rest." Next, I reached out to the property manager of my childhood home, the one my parents were still renting month to month. I had purchased the house under an LLC 2 years ago, using part of my savings from my job in IT and a silent investor I had once freelanced for. My parents didn't know I owned the very roof over their heads. "Are they behind on rent again?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They've skipped 3 months," she replied. "We were about to send them a notice." "Don't," I said. "Let me." That night, my parents had the audacity to text me. "Dad, you've embarrassed this family." "Mom, Ava needs to learn who the real villains are." "Dad, you'll regret choosing outsiders over your own sister." They didn't know I had already sent them a certified letter with a 30-day eviction notice, and they didn't know what was coming next. But Kayla did. A few days later, I bumped into her at the grocery store. She looked at me like I was dirt. "You're still playing the victim?" she scoffed, tossing expensive hair products into her cart. "You mean the victim of your freeloading?" I said calmly. "I'm not playing anything. You're about to watch the stage crumble beneath your spotlight." She blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. Some people only learn by falling. The eviction letter arrived at my parents' house the next morning. Mom called me, screaming through the phone. "How could you do this to us?" I answered without emotion. "The same way you could hit your daughter in front of her child. Easy." "Where are we supposed to go?" she cried. "That's your problem," I said. "But if you need help, maybe Kayla can pay your rent." There was silence on the other end. Then she hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The next week was chaos. My parents tried to contact mutual relatives, trying to paint me as cruel, ungrateful, mentally unstable. I stayed quiet. I didn't need to defend myself. Instead, I picked Ava up from school with a calm heart and told her, "We're moving." Her eyes lit up. "Really? Where?" "To a place that's truly ours." I had closed on a small house a few streets over. Nothing fancy, but it had a fenced yard, Ava's favorite lavender bushes in front, and peace. Real peace. Meanwhile, my parents are now frantically trying to find housing with Kayla, who, according to the last message I received, was now too busy to help. Poetic. I didn't feel revengeful. I felt healed. But the final blow was still to come, one that would happen face to face. Exactly 30 days from the date on the eviction notice, I stood across the street from the house I once called home. They had to be out by noon. The front yard was cluttered with plastic bags, half-broken furniture, and my mother's prized patio swing now rusted at the base. My father was pacing like a caged animal. Kayla wasn't there. Apparently, she had flown out to Miami to clear her head. I crossed the street slowly, Ava holding my hand, her tiny fingers squeezing mine tighter the closer we got. She had a backpack over her shoulder with her sketch pad sticking out. I didn't plan for her to witness this, but she asked to come. She said, "I want to see what it looks like when people get what they deserve." The moment they saw me, my mother rushed forward. You can't be serious," she snapped, dragging a suitcase behind her. "We're your family. You're throwing us out like garbage?" I looked at her without flinching. "I was garbage to you when I needed protection. When Ava needed protection, you hit me like I was nothing, and now you want sympathy?" My dad stomped toward us. "You think money gives you power? You've become arrogant. You're just a tenant who bought herself a crown." "No," I said. "I became the landlord of my own life. And yours." He reached for my arm, but this time I didn't freeze. I didn't cower. "Touch me again," I said sharply, "and the police will arrive faster than your next lie." He stopped. Something in his eyes shifted. Maybe for the first time he realized he couldn't scare me anymore. Ava stepped slightly forward. "You shouldn't have hurt my mom," she said, voice quiet but clear. "You lied about love." My mom's lip trembled, but she didn't apologize. She never did. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "No," I said. "I regretted letting you stay this long." They stood there, two people stripped of control, their pride scattered in the driveway. They had always held power over me, through guilt, silence, and fear, but today the roles reversed. And it felt like breathing for the first time. I turned to Ava. "Let's go." We walked back toward our car, not looking back. Later that evening, I poured us both tea, hers chamomile, mine green. She sat across from me at the new kitchen table in our tiny home. The lavender bushes outside caught the golden hour light, swaying like they'd been waiting for us. "Do you feel better now?" Ava asked, legs swinging under the chair. I thought for a moment. "I feel clean," I said, like something heavy was washed away. She nodded like she understood. I had started therapy. Ava had started painting. We were slowly rebuilding, not just a home, but a self-worth that had been stolen, splintered, and mocked. A few weeks later, I got a message from a distant cousin. My parents were now staying in a one-bedroom apartment above a closed nail salon. Kayla had ghosted them, leaving nothing but an angry voicemail and a drained Venmo account. No one was rushing to save them. They had burned every bridge. I never replied. Instead, I posted a picture of Ava holding her latest painting, a small house with 2 stick figures and the sun smiling overhead. The caption read, "We don't live in fear anymore." And we didn't. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video?